You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Toronto Sports Rush, part of the Bet Rivers Network. I'm Sara Civian, and I'm joined by channel contributor, NHL analyst, and host, Hradek. EJ, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Sara. Yes.
Last night, we were treated to a playoff-esque showdown featuring the top two teams in the Atlantic, the Leafs and the Panthers. The Panthers in their power play came up with a 3-2 win and held the number one spot in the division. Now, Max Domi said the division title doesn't mean bleep, but it was still a measuring stick game. What did we learn about the Leafs?
Yeah, the team that lose these type of games, they always say that, right? What are they going to say? Yeah, well, we're done. We're cooked. I mean, it was a good game. I mean, I thought the Leafs were in the game. It was a tight game. The power play made the difference. Sam Bennett got to the net twice and scored in close. And Sam Bennett is always a factor in important games, or at least he has been since he arrived in Florida with the Panthers. What a trade, Sara, that was to get Sam Bennett, who was a high draft pick, just didn't, for whatever reason. And it's kind of hard to figure out why it didn't work in Calgary, because when you watch this guy play, he is such a difference maker in big games. He's one of those guys that it'll be fascinating to watch this summer what happens, because the Panthers have been able to keep players there in Florida, and why wouldn't they? The weather's great, and no tax state, and they have a good team. But he's not signed yet, and if he gets to the market on July 1st, there'll be a lot of teams, including the Leafs, I would imagine, that would be interested in his services for just that point, that he plays really well in big games. He plays with a physical edge. He gets to those areas, and he did that in the game last night. So, I thought the Leafs played pretty good. You got to remember, Florida's without Tkachuk. They're without, Marchand has yet to join the team. They're without Ekblad. Toronto just gets back Tanev, back from a trip, so there's always mitigating circumstances. But, Florida, we think, is just probably a little better, and that's what it ended up last night, right? 3-2, they were a little better.
Right, and it's so playoff-esque because the special teams are the difference, right? The Panthers scored twice in the power play, but we also got to see new additions, Brandon Carlo and Scott Laughton, spend a lot of time on the PK. What are we seeing from them, from the Leafs so far?
Well, they're trying to find their way. It's got to be difficult, I think, for both of them, because both of them came into the league with their respective teams, Boston and Philadelphia, and they've played their whole careers in those places. And now, for Carlo particularly, I mean, that was a rival, right, of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, they're saying and doing all the right things, but there is an adjustment period. And like Scott Laughton last night, he had a tough break on what proved to be the game-winning goal, where on the power play where Bennett scored. Was when the puck was up high near the blue line. He went to the blue line with Seth Jones, and the puck hung on the line, and it looked like Laughton was going to get it out, and Jones was able just to kind of hook it with his stick and tap it back in, and that led to the sequence where the Panthers scored. So, those guys, I think they're good additions. They'll be helpful players for the Leafs. I think these next, 16, 17 games down the stretch, those will be games that those guys can kind of get themselves kind of set up in Toronto and feel more acclimated to the team. So they were good acquisitions. I said at the deadline last week, Sara, I thought they were kind of a B. It was a B. If you're grading it, it wasn't an A. They didn't get, maybe the top players in those spots, but they got guys that can help their team. And, I think they'll do that. And, again, they got 2 more games against the Florida Panthers coming up. These are measuring stick games. It'll be interesting to see if the Leafs can take their level up a notch, because they're going to have to, especially if Florida gets Tkachuk back in the lineup in the playoffs.
I can't lie. Watching that Jones sequence there made me really excited to see what he's going to do with the Panthers on a good team ready to contend. That was a great game.
Yeah, first time for Seth playing really on a high-end team. He played in Nashville as he started his career. They're a pretty good team there, but he was there a couple of years. He ended up going to Columbus. They had 1 or 2 good years in Columbus, but, the decision that he made to kind of force his way to Chicago will never make sense to me. I guess there's a lot of money, but he probably was going to get a lot of money no matter where he ended up going. So he had some tough years there, but you're right. He'll be much better supported in Florida. He's got to be really revved up from a personal standpoint to be playing on a much better team and a team that's going to support him better. And you're absolutely right. He made a huge play there. And now with Ekblad out down the stretch, he played 28 minutes, I think, in the game Tuesday night when they lost to Boston. Paul Maurice is going to lean on him a lot more, and that may be good for Seth to kind of get himself acclimated to his teammates in Florida.
Mm-hmm. To you, does the division title actually sort of mean bleep in this erratic Eastern Conference?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think for Toronto, it means more than it does for Tampa and Florida because those two teams have won the Stanley Cup in the last 5 years. And so they've gone through different paths to get there. Now, I think for both of those teams, it would be beneficial to win the division and not have to, in that little pod of three teams, you only want to have to beat one of them. You don't want to have to beat both of them. And so for Toronto, I feel it's more important because they haven't had that playoff success. For them to play a wild card, which could still be, a very tough series. I mean, it could be the Ottawa Senators and the Battle of Ontario, and those guys would be loose, and that could be a nightmare of a different sort for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But we're going to think that the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning are more playoff battle tested teams. To avoid playing both of them to get to the Eastern Conference Final would be beneficial for the Leafs. But at the end of the day, nobody has all you can do is play the games. We saw, I think last night, St. Louis played Pittsburgh. St. Louis is desperate to get to, into a playoff spot. They've been playing really good hockey. They have an easy schedule, right, Sarah? They'll go into Pittsburgh and win that game. And they end up losing. And we've seen this year after year after year where, you think you're benefiting in one way and you end up losing anyway. So, or you think you have a tough path and you find your way to win. So it's going to play out as it is. The Leafs are probably going to have to win these final two games they play against Florida down the stretch and probably in regulation to get that number one spot. Whatever the path is, that's the path you face. And, to be quite honest about that whole thing, Toronto has played well against Tampa in the past. In fact, they did beat them in a playoff series not too long ago. So, maybe that path of all of them is maybe the most favorable. We'll see.
Yeah, and the second you start playing scared or talking scared, like, you know what, we want this seed, we want that seed, that's when you're doomed a little bit. My old friend Rod Brindamore used to always say, we want the hardest team first. You have to beat them eventually. Why not get it over with? So kind of good philosophy.
He makes a good point there from the standpoint in this league, like at the start of the playoffs is when you're at your best and you're healthiest, right? I mean, you've seen it, Sarah, over the years, like teams, as they go further in the playoffs, they acquire injuries, they have issues. I mean, I think you'd like to not play those teams at all. If you can avoid them, let someone else beat them. But, he might have a good point there is that, you have your best shot maybe when you're at your healthiest to beat a good team.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Domi and his firecracker quote, I mean, have a game, a clean hit, a beatdown of Nate Schmidt, and a goal later with Father Ty in attendance. Do you think he might gain some steam from this performance and peak at the right time coming into the playoffs?
Well, I mean, I hope so. I mean, it's a great spot, right, Sarah? I mean, that's, what Max Domi wants to be. He wants to be a guy is going to have impact on the game. He wants to be the Leafs version of Sam Bennett, of somebody that's going to get in there and is going to deliver a big blow and may end up getting in a fight and could score a goal. And I mean, that one off the rush last night, that was a really nice play off the rush and a nice shot. It kind of caught me by surprise when he was able to score there, but he was moving his feet and he made a good shot. But he has had a tough year offensively. I think that was his fourth goal of the season last night.
Yeah.
So, but all that gets wiped away, right, Sarah? Because we've seen this before. You go into the playoffs, Max could have a good first playoff game, and all of a sudden, he's playoff Max. And, it just becomes one of these guys that really is more helpful. I think that's what the Leafs are hoping for. I think that's what they were probably hoping for when they signed him, that, when the games get grittier and tougher, that, those elements of his game will benefit the team. We will see how that plays out, but I'm sure that he would love to have a clean slate right now, at least from a statistical standpoint, because he hasn't scored a ton of goals this year.
Yeah, he's a streaky fella, so that could be to their advantage right now when he starts doing well,
Yeah.
But look, okay, I've been patient, but I think we actually have to talk about the elephant in the room now. Auston Matthews, he has only scored half the goals he scored last season through 49 games. He scored just 3 in his last 15. Last night's eye test, too, I'm watching him. I'm getting really frustrated. Is he hurt? Should we worry?
Well, I think he hasn't been at his best, that he has been out of the lineup this year with injuries earlier in the season. He played in the Four Nations. He played very well. Unfortunately, things didn't go his way in the tournament. He had an opportunity to be the hero, and he got stymied by Jordan Binnington. So, I do wonder. I mean, 3 goals in the 15 games is the thing that really catches your eye. And I'm sure, like all these guys, Sarah, right? Like they're all playing with some little something, right? Because this is a physical game. You play 82 games over the course of, a couple of months. And right now the schedule you're playing, 3 games in 4 nights, 4 games in 6 nights. I mean, the toll it takes, and Matthews is not somebody that is, not noticed by the other team. They are paying attention to Matthews and delivering, kind of a physical play when they can. I thought he played okay last night. He had his moments in the game. I thought he played okay. But again, they rely on him as a guy that can score from distance, that can score in different situations. And, the 3 goals in 15 games does make you wonder, what ailments may be, holding him back a bit. So we're just going to have to watch and see where it goes. I mean, they don't tell us anything, right? He's certainly not telling us anything. Remember, he disappeared earlier in the year. He was in Germany. Remember, we talked about that. Sarah, I thought they were going to send you over there to track him down. I didn't know what was going on, but like he's obviously got something that he's dealing with, and they got to hope that he can get through this and be ready to be as productive as he can be in the playoffs. Because if he's playing, right, no one is going to feel bad for him. It's just going to be he's in the spotlight. If he plays well, he'll get the credit for playing well. If he doesn't play well, people will continue to wonder, is this guy going to be able to, the old story, can he play well in the big games? I think it's there for Matthews. I don't know, again, the physical challenges that he may or may not be facing right now, but clearly when someone who scores at the level he scored at in his career goes through this kind of slide, you do wonder if there's something that's ailing him.
Now let me ask you this. Are Nylander and Marner playing at a level where the Leafs can still win a cup regardless of if Matthews is at 100% or not?
I think Matthews has to be playing really well. I mean, I think all those guys have to be playing well. It's just too hard in this league. And, you look at Florida last night, and this is the beauty of a Stanley Cup championship team and a team that really understands what it takes now. And they really understand how they want to play, is they're missing Matthew Tkachuk, who is a real important piece of their team. And they're missing Aaron Ekblad on defense, which kind of shuffles things around. And they still come in and just play a hard checking game. They adapt, like Paul Maurice said after the game. We're not as physical maybe without Matthew and without Aaron, but he goes, but we still can skate. We know how to check, and they got good performances from other players. So that's got to be the path for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like those big guys are going to have to play well and contribute and like tilt the ice when they're on the ice. I mean, obviously you want to score. You'd like to win the game 9-0, but like that's not the way it is in these games, right? Mm-hmm. You saw last night. It was a tight game. It was decided by power play goals by the Florida Panthers. I thought the Panthers, their fourth liners sometimes were able to tilt the ice a little bit and create zone time and create pressure. That's what the Leafs have to try to do, is to get everybody, all 4 lines, in the mix, creating opportunity in the game. And I didn't see enough of that last night, Sarah. So to go back to the question, I think it's more incumbent on those Leafs players to play well. I think Marner's been playing very, very well. I think Nylander's kind of has his moments, but Nylander has shown to be he really loves the pressure and the spotlight. So I'm not really worried about Nylander. Matthews, we're going to see where he's at physically, but I think it'll be hard for the Leafs to really make a deeper run if Auston Matthews isn't producing offense, just because I don't know if they get enough out of the bottom of their group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Zooming out, there are 17 games left this season. What would you see in that span that would make you excited for the Leafs Cup hopes, and what would make you most concerned?
Well, excited would be beating the Florida Panthers twice. I mean, that would make me excited, right? Because, let's face it, those games are, as you pointed out, are a measuring stick. I mean, Max Domi's going to say what he wants. The players are going to say what they want, but as we watch this, I think 2 really good performances against the Florida Panthers down the stretch would be really helpful. I think just to kind of continue to round out their game would make me feel good. I would think that if Lachlan I always get Carlo. I always get Coyle.
I do too. I have made that mistake so many times in my articles.
It's very frustrating because I keep thinking about Coyle and I'm meaning Carlo. But for those guys to get integrated would be important, and to be helpful players for Tanev to stay healthy down the stretch and play well. I mean, he's such a critical part of the team, and, clean up the special teams. I mean, again, in these important games, you just can't allow. I mean, those are not good power play goals to give up, Sarah, in my view. I mean, like to have Sam Bennett, the one time he just completely slides in behind McCabe and gets body position there. I mean, you've got to have your head more on a swivel. You have to know where players are. And then the second time, again, it would seem like he was able to just kind of position himself there. And, they got to shut those plays down in tight like that. So, those are the things, the little things that would make me excited to see them button up those things down the stretch. And the things you worry about, like I'd be nervous you lose the 2 games to Florida. Right now you fall into that situation where you don't even know if you're going to have home ice against Tampa, because Tampa's right on their heels as well. And Ottawa's playing very well. So, who knows where they're going to fit into this equation as we move forward. So, and Linus Ullmark is playing lights out right now. And that's bad news. If that continues, that's bad news whoever gets Ottawa in the first round, whether it's Florida or whoever, because as we know, a hot goaltender could be a big difference maker in a playoff series. So, you want to see them moving forward, playing well. But I think those games against Florida, to me, I just think you have to gain some momentum by by winning against a team that you think you're likely going to have to go through at some point.
And they got two more cracks at it, so it's a great opportunity to do that before and get some confidence headed into the playoffs if they want to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's where they're at. I think last night was, like I said, they played okay, but at the big moments in the game, Sam Bennett got to those spaces. Those are the spaces where the games are won and lost, and that's always the case for me over the years with Toronto. They weren't, and I've used the phrase a million times, I think they're more contender than pretender. In the past, they were pretender because they couldn't win in those areas. They've been much better in those areas this year. They've got to be better against the Florida Panthers, that's for sure.
100% agreement with you there. We'll be keeping an eye on that and everything else in this crucial stretch before the playoffs. EJ, thank you so much for your time. Have a great weekend with the GMs and get us some Leafs scoops.
All right, I'll work on it, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.